Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Saskia. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm one of the conference coordinators for No Time to Wait 2020. I hope that the sessions have so far been informative and interesting today, and I'm excited to have you here for our next roundtable, where we'll be discussing living with HIV, how to get care, and how to support the process. We were able to secure some awesome guest speakers for this event, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about them and their stories. This event is structured around our guest speakers, Ryan Kerr, Adam, Marvelous, and Kaylee. Please feel free to send messages in the chat along the way, and I'll keep track of any questions that you put in there. And afterwards, the speakers will come on for a live Q&A, so they'll have a chance to answer your questions. First off, I'd like to introduce Ryan Kerr, streaming to us live from Toronto, Ontario. Ryan, maybe you could tell us a bit about yourself and then dive right into your presentation.
Hi. Well, thank you so much, Saskia. Thanks so much, the organizers and the coordinators, for inviting me to this. It's very cool. We were having a little chat backstage, some of the presenters and I would say I'm about like 94% out about my status. So it's interesting to be invited to present virtually and talk about being somebody living with HIV and how that feels and all of that stuff. And I have to say, it's a little nerve-wracking every time. We all want to be liked. We all want to be accepted. And for me, living with HIV has been quite a journey. So a little bit about me. I am 37 years old and I tested positive when I was 26. So I guess I'm in year 11. And it was one of those situations that I wasn't expecting. I just went for a routine checkup and voila, I got the surprise. And I have lived in Toronto's gay community for a long time, and I've been an active participant. And so, the messaging around HIV and around prevention was really clear. So, I knew as much as people knew in 2008 about HIV, and I knew about ways of preventing it, and still I had it. So I dealt with a lot of shame when I first tested positive, and it impeded my ability to actually look for support and to find care. And I now work in HIV, and I think part of that is a course correction to, see if I can grab other people who may respond similarly to me or have the same reaction, which is that, some of us, our response is like, oh my God, I don't want anyone to know, like a cat hiding under the stairs. When a cat is injured, because they disappear. And I tried to do that in my life. And I'm very grateful for the very few friends that were able to pinpoint a change in my behavior and kind of jump in and help out as best as they could. And it was actually a close friend of mine who took me to my very first doctor's appointment 6 or 7 months after I tested positive. And that doctor said to me, Ryan, it's a real shame you didn't come sooner because, your viral load is so low that we may have been able to just treat you really heavily and knock the HIV out of your body, which was a interesting bit of information to hear. Obviously, hindsight being 2020, I wish I had connected to care immediately. That would have been a really awesome situation. But here we are, year 11. I am healthy, although I did just have a lot of potato chips. So that's probably going to be, out of balance for about 6 hours. And I work in HIV. So I'm in a community and an industry that is accepting of my status. And that has really helped me to move along in my career and also in my own journey of self-acceptance and kind of confronting the shame that I have. And I guess that sort of brings me to where I am right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Ryan. And again, everyone, please feel free to ask questions along the way in the chat, and I'll write them down, and we'll be able to address them at the end. And our next speaker is Adam, who's joining us today all the way from Melbourne, Australia. So go ahead and introduce yourself. Feel free to head straight into your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Saskia and Let's Stop AIDS for inviting me to present. I just want to begin by acknowledging all of those who have passed of AIDS-related causes since the start of the epidemic, and passionate and dedicated activists, advocates, allies, clinicians, and scientists that have assisted the HIV response around the world. I also want to acknowledge my extreme privilege as a cisgender, gay, white, educated male. I've got access to world-class treatment, care and support here in Australia, and this enables me to maintain an undetectable viral load into the foreseeable future, which is not afforded to many people around the world. I was diagnosed HIV positive in 2014 with a routine sexual health screen. I was working in Eastern Europe and came back to Brisbane in Australia. I contacted my previous partner, who was the first person that I could think of, and he was a voice of calm and reassurance, saying things would be okay and he would be there when I needed him. Unfortunately, the diagnosis was handed over the phone by someone that was really experienced, and that kind of piqued my anxiety. So for a week before the diagnosis was confirmed, I was just praying basically that it was a false positive and that it wasn't correct, which was really tough. And I remember going to the clinic and having my previous partner by my side. They confirmed the diagnosis. And yeah, it was like things went into slow motion. It was really hard to kind of accept. And I remember him arranging to go away with his family, and everyone was so happy to see me after me working abroad for so long. And I was just going through my own personal hell, and it was really difficult for me because I was someone that prided myself on my health and well-being. And one of the two concerns my mum had when I came out as gay was, what about HIV and what about grandkids? And I felt like a bit of a failure there for making one of her fears a reality. So I had to go back to work over in Eastern Europe with no treatment. I didn't have time to initiate it. Limited support, fearing becoming sick over there, and that I would be deported. So it was a really stressful time for me. The principal of the school where I was working over there, I resigned or gave notice as soon as I returned over there, so that by the end of 2014 I was expected to finish. And one of the teachers let me know that her brother was HIV positive, and his partner had died of an AIDS-related cause. He was sent back to the Middle East. The parents didn't want anything to do with him, so I kept it in mind. And towards the end of the year, when I went to speak to her again, I asked if that was true. She said yes. I was in tears, and she understood immediately why I needed to leave, and has been a great support ever since. And unfortunately, her brother passed of an AIDS-related cause. He was living in New York. Substance use issues, didn't adhere to treatment. And she sent me his obituary and said, I know you'll understand this. And it was extremely difficult for me. She saw a lot of similar qualities. But it speaks to the need to adhere wherever possible and for people to need the support. Similarly, I also had support just prior to leaving, working abroad, where I disclosed to one of the teachers. She was originally from Texas. We worked very closely together, and she wrote me a 5-page letter. And in that letter, she validated every positive quality that I had. You will be strong. You are loved. You'll be supported. You'll get through this. You'll find a partner that will affirm you. And it was incredibly, it was amazing. And to this day, she continues to do so. So try and find those supported people wherever possible. Know that you don't need to disclose, but if you do, hopefully you'll have those people in your life. Early 2015, when I had returned to Australia, I initiated treatment. The first clinic that I went to, the clinician was quite judgmental and dismissed my concerns for starting treatment. To me, that was unacceptable, and so I went somewhere else. And the next doctor that I went and saw was just simply incredible. They were non-judgmental. They were thorough. They were patient-centered. They were a good listener, and they gave me options. And after 6 weeks, I became undetectable. And I still remember at that time him saying that few things make him more satisfied as a HIV clinician than a patient getting to undetectable so rapidly. So it was a major tick for me in terms of being in control of my status and my health. But at the same time, I was able to work with someone that I respected, and that's really important. So I would encourage you to look for those providers that are truly inclusive and supportive. And I've received a lot of assistance from community members through word of mouth that will recommend the best healthcare providers available. And it makes a really big difference. It means that I can be open and talk and get the best possible care that I can. And it's amazing. The second thing that I want to highlight is the importance of peer support. It can be incredible. So after diagnosis, I went to a HIV organization and I linked in with a peer navigator. Around the same time, I had disclosed to my mum, who was actually quite good. I expected a lot of tears and emotion, but we ended up going to that organization together. And this peer support worker normalized HIV for me. They provided accurate information, referrals, and they were able to link me to someone that advocated on my behalf in terms of mental health. So in Australia, we have something called TIM, T-I-M. It stands for the Institute of Many. It's a virtual platform for peer support by and for people living with HIV. And it's where people can talk openly about side effects, stigma and discrimination, mental health concerns, and a range of other things. And so I'd encourage you to potentially consider joining that, because it gets you through some tough times. And finally, not everything's been easy. I've experienced stigma and discrimination from medical professionals and other gay males on apps. I've lost 2 international jobs after disclosing my status in medical forms. However, I look to embrace MEPA, which is meaningful engagement with people living with HIV in the sector, in a range of ways. And it's taken me a while, but I see HIV as a blessing in disguise. I participated in the Positive Leadership Development Institute program over here, which was originally a Canadian program, and connected with amazing leaders, and actually became alumni coordinator for that for a period of time. I trained up to be a speaker and share my lived experience with the Positive Speakers Bureau over here. And that's one of the most rewarding things I do, where I bust myths and misconceptions that exist about HIV. And it doesn't matter if it's in schools or to medical professionals, I know that I can make a difference. I'm a member of multiple HIV cure and COVID-19 committees, and I see that as being really important as we progress our journey with HIV. And I joined the board of a HIV organisation here called Living Positive Victoria to get some governance experience. And it's been incredible. And I've been the president of this organisation for 2 years and just stood down recently. The conferences that I've attended globally have been incredible, whether it's in Durban for the International AIDS Conference or Amsterdam. Last year I was in Mexico City for a HIV conference and traveled to San Francisco multiple times for HIV cure meetings. There's incredible solidarity. It's uplifting to be among community, and you can see resilience in action. So many people around the world are fighting for violations of their fundamental human rights. And so it paints a global picture. In addition, I studied a Master's of Science in Medicine, specializing in HIV, STIs, and sexual health. And this has deepened my knowledge of various intersectional HIV issues globally. So I've grown personally and professionally in the last few years. So my key takeaways are to seek the best healthcare providers that you can. They should understand undetectable equals untransmittable, and they should be patient-centered and holistic. To consider utilizing peer support wherever possible will get you through those tough times, because stigma and discrimination is a thing that we face as people living with HIV. And when you're ready, or if you become ready, look for opportunities to meaningfully engage in the HIV response where you are. You can meet some incredible people and make a real difference. So just to conclude, I'd like to thank Let's Stop AIDS for inviting me to present at this conference. And please feel free to connect with me to get any more information. Thank you.
Adam, thank you so much for sharing your story so honestly and openly with us today. With that, I would love to introduce Marvelous, who works for Vive Healthcare Canada. Marvelous, we'd love to hear a bit more about you first, and then you can get started with your presentation.
Okay, so my name is Marvelous Mchenje, and I'm working for Vive Healthcare as the manager, community relations and communication. But I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I came to Canada in 2006. for the AIDS conference, and I decided to stay and contribute to the HIV movement. And I wear so many hats that you hear about during my presentation. So do I share my presentation, or are you going to share it? Hello? Hello, can you share my presentation, because I can't seem to be able to share it from my end. Yeah. Can you put it on PowerPoint slide? Then I will let you know when I want you to go next. Next. So as I indicated, I work for Viv Healthcare Canada, and Viv Healthcare is a pharmaceutical company, and our company solely focuses on combating, preventing, and ultimately curing HIV/AIDS. If you should know one thing about us, know this: we will not rest until we leave no person living with HIV behind. So that's mostly our priority, and that's what we really focus on. We really want to ensure that every effort that we do in the HIV sector is geared on actually providing care to people living with HIV, and we do that in various ways. Besides just producing the treatment, HIV treatment, we also have different programs like grants. That is also an area that I would have wanted to share, but due to the time that I have, I won't be able to do that. But I will leave my email address so that you can get in touch. Next slide. So my role actually involves going into the community and linking with community, is relationship building and stakeholder management. And I think as I joined Viv in last year in December. The reason why I wanted to be on the table is I wanted really to make sure that the voices of people living with HIV are heard. Although I know Viv has been doing that for so many years, but I also wanted to contribute to those conversations and to contribute to how grants are given to community members, or how treatment and research being done in Viv is also inclusive of people living with HIV. Next. Hello? So, can you put the body map? The previous slide, please. Previous. Thank you. So I decided that due to the limitation in time, I would like to share my story using my body map. So when I came to Canada, I came in 2006, as I mentioned. I was diagnosed with HIV in 1995, way back in Zimbabwe. And at first, like everyone has shared, we all had different experiences. And for me, my experience was mostly, I moved from where I was seeing myself as a victim, because I was diagnosed when I was pregnant, and I felt like so much anger at the person that had given me the HIV. And for a long time, that anger stopped me from doing anything else. I think I was waiting for a long time to hear the word "I'm sorry" or to have a discussion, but unfortunately I didn't have that. When with time, when I realized that was not coming, I actually wanted to use my anger to do something else passionate. So that's when I moved from a private sector, where I was the National Finance Secretary in Zimbabwe in an HIV organization, to no, prior to that, I was in a private sector at a company that was doing accounts. And then I moved in the private sector and became the National Finance Secretary in Zimbabwe. So most of the time I realized as an accountant, I wasn't in the office most of the time. And the board would comment time after time that, Marvelous, we employed you as an accountant, not as an advocate. But I just couldn't keep quiet because there was so much stigma. There was so much... people thought that HIV is for people who are poor or uneducated, and I wanted to prove them wrong. So I left the accounting job and started just to work with UNAIDS, UNICEF, and other organizations to give a face to HIV. That's when my advocacy started while I was in Zimbabwe. And I said I moved from hopelessness to hopefulness because I thought I took that opportunity to actually use both my skills that I had as a social person. It was easy for me to talk to other people living with HIV. So I also did counseling, and with my family counseling background, I was able to use my example with different platforms. But I was also able to participate in the public, advocating for access to treatment, and talking to the government, and also talking at the international level. And from silence, when I came to Canada at first, it was hard for me to fit in because I think some people thought I was a rough rider at first, because that's the only way I knew. In Africa, we're used to doing placards and to demand in so many ways, which other people didn't see it well here in Canada. So I had to just find ways of fitting in as an advocate, to find ways of how do I put my point across and not appearing as an angry Black woman. That was hard at first, but I also had to find allies who thought I like me. And I was lucky enough to be working for an organization called Women's Health in Women's Hands in Toronto. They gave me that platform. They gave me the platform to learn, to be who I am, to be authentic with how I felt, but also to be diplomatic. And as you see on my body map, I'm not sure how big you can see it. I had put that the sky is the limit for me, because I realized for me to be on those tables or to go and represent people living with HIV, whether at the UNAIDS, I needed to know the language. I needed to know and understand what other people are saying. I didn't want to be on tables just for tokenism. So I really started going back to school to do my diploma in social work, and I finished, and I did my master's in global health, and I'm currently doing my PhD in social work at University of Toronto. So my passion is just to show that as people living with HIV, we can still contribute, we can still be productive citizens, and be able to give the support that we can. Next. And I'm not going to talk about the holistic care because already other people have talked about it. Next. So knowledge is power. So for me, when I say knowledge is power, it's what made me to be where I am, because I found that I needed to talk to other people. For a long time, I didn't deal with my anger of my HIV diagnosis, and it took me a long time. One day, I think it almost took me more than 10 years until one day I really broke down, and I was able to just be vulnerable and share with others how I felt. And I listened to others, people's stories, and they gave me courage. And I also started to learn from my colleagues, from presentations, but I also did my own research to find out what's new in the HIV, in HIV, whether it's treatment, whether it's other alternative treatment, but it's listening and talking to others that really helped me. Next. So we're talking, as we talk about being an advocate or being in a relationship, I think the issue of disclosure always comes. And sometimes we don't think about it at first because we are still grieving, but sometimes also our providers do not bring it up. But 5 things that I would like to leave with you is that before you even think about disclosure is not just a one stop thing. It's a journey, and it comes over and over again. And so it starts off by you accepting and being empowered enough to know what is HIV and if I dealt with my grief, but also having the education that you need, because when you disclose to someone else, depending with their level of understanding, they might need education from you. And what's motivating you to disclose? Is it because you have a new partner, or is it because of public health? So you have to also look at that, but also look at the repercussions of disclosure. If you are in a violent relationship, you need to find ways of how to get support. But also the outcomes might be extremely ruthless. So you have support around you to be able to do that. And plan when are you going to do it and where. Next. And those that know me, I don't leave my presentations without talking about sex. And sometimes when people get diagnosed with HIV, you feel like you're dirty. You feel like, you start body shaming yourself because maybe the side effect from the medication, or sometimes you just you don't have the libido. So find out how you can also seek help from your physicians, or find ways of having healthy relationships. Don't go into unhealthy relationship because you just feel like I'm HIV positive, so I can just pick anyone and everyone. No. Shift from focusing from risk to pleasure and enjoy it. Whether you enjoy it on your own or whether you enjoy it with the chosen partners, that's up to you. But you must have the information and also get your checkups to see that everything is okay. Next. So one thing I would like to leave with you, I know I've been going so fast, is that us at VIV, we've got a commitment that we are not going anywhere. We are here to stay until we reach the targets that we and our partners are looking at. I know someone in the morning was talking about the 90 that we keep moving the years. Hopefully, as a community, we'll fight together and get there somehow. We'll eradicate HIV together. But until then, we are here to stay, and I'm always there for you if you need me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Marvelous. It was really great to learn more about you and your advocacy work. And this is a perfect transition into our last guest speaker, Kaylee Garland. Kaylee, we would love to hear more about you and your story.
Oh, I am Kaylee, and I just wanted to first share that I was diagnosed at age 7, and I was born with HIV positive in 1986, and my family had no idea until I was diagnosed. And it was 1993, and at that time there was only anabolic steroids and AZT at the time, and my mother was able to get me into a study at NIH, the National Institutes of Health, through the Pediatric AIDS Foundation. That study consisted of AZT, 3-TC, and DDI, which were the first cocktail trial therapy for children, and I got to experience this whole new life before I knew I knew nothing really about my body. I was just a child just going along with the ride. And I learned that I was HIV positive. And that was never a scary thing to me, even though I saw people scared around me. And I got to just soak up a whole lot of life. I really wanted to, be normal. And what was normal? And was I normal? Are these kids normal? I don't know. And all I did know is I needed to protect myself and not share my status, which was a huge part of growing up, is being having this self-preservation and aware of stigma and the fact that people could be so cruel. In 1993, Ryan White was, a major part of history, and just stigma was a real thing. And I saw my mom, I was born with it, so I got through my mother to child transmission. And my two older brothers and my father don't have HIV. They're negative. And I really just saw my mom's amount of guilt and shame in her passing the virus on to me, which I never wanted my mom to have. There's nothing I could possibly do to take it away. I was very aware of the fact that we are all humans. HIV is an acronym and it doesn't discriminate. So I just didn't understand why people were so hateful and judgmental towards other humans. And it was a sad thing for me to learn and have my reality checked as an 8-year-old girl, that people's families could provide different sets of dishes and walk around with cleaning supplies behind their people, or shun them out of their communities, not want to play with them. And that was really terrifying for me. And growing up, I would hear people say lowbrow jokes that were based in ignorance and naivety about HIV. And I, couldn't say anything. I had to stuff it down, even though I wanted to be like, well, I have AIDS. And I didn't really get sick until I was 16 to 18 years old. I got meningitis 4 times. And that's because after my HIV cocktail therapy trials at NIH, I got on another trial at NIH for the protease inhibitors. And these were 12 pills 3 times a day. And I had control. My trial before was liquid medications, and I needed help to get them down. I literally would be sat on, and I would take the medication and throw them up. And when I graduated on to the next study for the protease inhibitors, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not taking these drugs. These drugs make me feel terrible. And it was such a hard thing to fathom and grasp in my mind that there was something wrong with me and that I was sick, because I didn't feel sick, but I felt sick definitely after I took those pills. But yeah, that's just something to be said about the evolution of drugs. And it's definitely, I take 2 pills a day and I have no side effects, and I'm undetectable. And my biggest mission after getting sick with meningitis 4 times, the ages of 16, 18, I had my head shaved, and I got to see, another slice of people and just how they looked at me being 88 pounds with a shaved head. I had my cloak of, being able to cover up my sickness was gone. And I just wanted to show people how awful they could make their own faces just by looking at me. And I was very aware of how I looked. I, just wanted to go outside and have a nice time. I wasn't trying to absorb these people's, emotions and faces of disgust and distaste, because my body was healing. And all I wanted to do is just just lit a fire underneath me to be more vocal. And, when I got better, to show people, yeah, this is HIV and it doesn't discriminate. And, to go out and get tested, and to be aware that you can't see if someone has HIV. my tribe of HIV positive people is pretty sexy. And even though that's manageable now, like, let's try not to get it, because like we can end it. And it is okay if you got it, because it's so manageable now. And that fear of 1984 stigma of, you know, it being contracted and people having fears of giving their HIV to someone, it's taken away. It's off the table, because we have medicines that are so powerful that it can get you to a point where you can't pass on the virus. And my message that I want people to know is the fact that HIV is like being a diabetic and needing insulin. It's manageable, and that's it. And I really want people to be aware of the mental health weight, and just with their stigmas and how that projects to put people down to not get tested. And it just stops saying negative things that suppress people and not getting tested and not living their best, because life is hard and we need to be a little bit kinder to each other. And that's the only way we're going to be able to end AIDS, is if people accept that it can happen to them, and that's okay, and just to get it into their routine to go get tested. Mwah.
Kaylee, thank you so much for sharing your story. Through stories like yours. And with that being said, thank you to everyone who presented today. I recognize that it can take a lot of energy and courage to share personal stories, and I'm so glad that you were able to do that with us today. Now we're going to show a quick reel before opening up the roundtable for questions. So if you do have any questions, everyone pop them in the chat and we will get back to them after this reel.
We are all unique, and even though our journeys are different, we are all in this together. Let's take some time and listen to these inspiring individuals about their own personal journeys and how they found the support that catered to their needs. You just might find their stories motivational and proof that help and support is all around you.
Okay, so it looks like we don't have any questions in the chat, but I will end this off with one question for anyone who feels like answering it. So one of the underlying principles concerning the involvement of people living with HIV in efforts to address it is nothing about us without us. What does that phrase mean to you?
Who wants to go first? You go, Marvelous.
So for me, nothing for us without us. I think when we look, I think among us, this panel of the dinosaur. It was because there were so many times when people living with HIV would be invited when decisions are already made, and you were not involved from the beginning, just to tick boxes to say people living with HIV are there, and then jobs also were being given to people, whether with them because they've got degrees or because they know more, and without considering people living with HIV and what we contribute. So by nothing without us, nothing for us without us, it means we have to come up with some of the things. Well, even if we don't have degrees, we know our body, we know what we want. So we don't want to be consulted at the end. We want to be partakers from the beginning, and we've got intelligence. We can think, we can work. HIV does not determine who we are. Doesn't mean that our brains do not work anymore. They do. So we want to be involved in all stages, from development of the program, implementing of the programs, and also reviewing the programs and planning these big themes that come up to say, okay, our theme is that our theme? Is that what we want? So I think that's what it means to me as a person living with HIV.
I would also say, and I thank you, Marvelous, and thank you everybody for what you've shared. it is super nerve-wracking, and this information is so close to the bone. And thank you all the panelists for sharing today. I also wanted to just add, it's not just about being brought to the table. It's about having power. And I think, nothing about us without us began as an activist slogan when pharmaceutical, specifically, my understanding is pharmaceutical organizers, at a conference in like 1990, were talking about all of these new developments, and there were no people with HIV who were in the audience. And so there's this team of activists broke in, holding up signs saying nothing about us without us, and that's where JIPA and MIPA came from. But I would say also, trust us, trust people who live with HIV, trust our experiences. It's not about consulting with us. It's about like empowering us to make choices and allowing us to have control. And I think that's part of the interesting combination of living with HIV and working in the industry is that it looks good for the industry to have buy-in from employees who are living with HIV. But when we don't have the power to make decisions and to direct programs and direct research and direct ourselves, then again, it comes off, like Marvelous said, of just ticking a box. So I would also add, not just have us at the table, but, we are the table.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think like great points from both panelists, tokenism is a thing. And so it's about the variety of opportunities, whether it's policy development, whether it's HIV cure and research, whether it's other organizational-led initiatives. People should always be present at the earliest stage, and where possible, they should be remunerated for their time, their effort, and their lived experience. So at every opportunity, there should be people living with HIV, if there's anything relevant whatsoever. They should be given a voice, and it should be a diversity of voices. It shouldn't just be gay men living with HIV. It should be people of colour, women, trans and non-binary, gender diverse individuals. All these individuals are people living with HIV. They form part of the body positive, so therefore their diverse experiences should be shared and part of all decision making.
I totally agree with everything everyone said. The fact that we are all had experiences and we all have a unique story that needs to be shared. That's how things grow. Fundamentally, you learn through stories, and that's why we need each other. And that's the beauty of being able to connect, and that's how we evolve. Honestly, I think ACT is the most beautiful group of people I've ever seen anything done. And that was our tribe, and that fight is just so important. And to speak.
Amazing. Well, I think I can speak on behalf of all the conference participants today when I say how grateful we are to have had you all join us. We'll be wrapping up the session now, but to everyone attending, feel free to check out the speaker profiles and socials for more information, or if you forgot to ask any questions, come to you later on. So enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.